Hey everyone, Xant here. So after a tiring launch reroll session, I finally got what I wanted, so I got to actually play Elune. I think summarizing the last 24 hours of figuring things out would probably help everyone, so here we are. First off, even though what units you reroll do matter to a degree, I think it's much more important to properly worry about a lineup. When I first started playing, I took the highest rarity and tier combinations and went to town, figuring that the stats would help me out. Well, I was wrong. I was actually pretty off the mark on that. There are 5 roles in Elune for a formation. You have DPS, healer, tank, buffer or support, and debuffer. Ideally, you'd have at least one of each of those roles. Although you probably want to focus DPS, tank, and healer kind of as a priority, the holy trinity, so to speak, of RPGs. Thing is, what I had done was I had put a tank, 2 debuffers, and 2 supports into a party. Well, not only did it take me forever to kill things, I had practically no party sustain. I did have an off healer, but it's definitely not a replacement for a dedicated healing unit. And even if your debuffer, in my case it was Mikazuki, she was built around doing damage. Most of her kit is actually pretty offensive. It just doesn't compare to an actual dedicated DPS. So after remaking my party and investing a bit more into my gear and evolving my units, I can now snooze through most fights. My current brick wall is that I currently need better gear, and some better Elunes, which is where my next tidbit of info lies. Gear is extremely important in Elune. High-level gear is rare and scarce, but it'll kind of change whatever unit you put it on to a large degree. The supply shop will be the main method that you have early game to get this kind of gear, so make sure you check back on it when it resets. It's a daily thing, right? Also, make sure you upgrade gear that you use. You'll think it'll sit around for a while, like legendary pieces. It's low cost to upgrade them a few times, and every 3 levels grants a random bonus effect to the gear. For example, these boots I have on Mikazuki, once they upgraded to +3, they gave bonus HP, and then at +6, gave bonus evasion. Since she's actually an evade type off-tank unit, and she's also on my front line, this was actually extremely lucky to pick up. The offhand that she has also gives evasion, but the +6 effect ended up rolling crit power. Unfortunately, though she does do damage, the evasion is much more important to her kit than crit. Yeah, if you plan on min-maxing your gear's effects, all I gotta say is good luck. It'll take a large amount of gold and hand stones, and obviously a good amount of RNG. On the note of enhancing, I personally use the lowest chance for the first few upgrades, and then move on to the highest chance option for the later ones. As you can see, the less stones that you use, the lower the chance of success is. Between the two, enhanced stones and gold, I'd rather burn the stones than my gold, especially later on. It's just that at the very beginning, for the first couple of plus marks, it's practically a guaranteed success for the upgrade, and you waste very little stones. Why waste if you don't have to? But once you get to like +3, +4, the chance drops enough that, in my opinion, it's worth using the extra stones. Especially since it seems that no matter how many stones I ended up spending on upgrading, I always found that I had more than I started with after just a short while of playing the game. What I'm trying to say here is don't be too conservative early if you got yourself a good piece of gear. Upgrading it a few times will really help you out, even more so if the rolls that you get on the gear are lucky. There's a lot to keep track of in Elune, surprisingly, so let's go through some of these things. First would have to be the unadvertised bonuses. Whenever you're on your home screen, you should see the red notification dots around things you should check, and it's also in your menu. However, there are some things that don't get this marker, even if they're time limited. One such example that people have been mentioning recently is the launch event rewards here. There's no notification, it just sits there hoping you'll go to claim all your free rewards that it gives you. Now, okay, sure, this may be a launch event and only valid during it, but most likely we're going to see more of this coming up later, so just kind of keep an eye on it, you know? Next up is the daily rewards. This one lets you select an item from a list 3 times a day in 1-hour intervals. Personally, I've been picking the Aeon because I've been grinding a good amount, and 50 Aeon's pretty good for what we're farming right now. Ultimately, it is up to you to pick whatever you think you need the most. Next up is the login timer rewards. Every 30 minutes of being in-game nets you an item, up to 2 hours total of game time. The rewards aren't too bad actually. You get some gold, some Aeon, some enhanced stones, and then some soul stones. Soul stones are used to summon a unit, and you can find that shop here. You can get these shards in a number of ways, one of them being through the supply shop that I mentioned earlier. My opinion is that if you see soul stones for a legendary in the shop, pick them up. You'll eventually need duplicates to transcend your units, and relying on the gacha, in my opinion anyways, is kind of a bad idea, unless you're spending a lot of money. But, like everything else, up to you to decide what's best. Higher rarity items do require rubies, not gold, to obtain, so choose wisely on that front. So, beyond just all the rewards and shops, there's a lot of daily things that you kind of have to do. Boss fights are a great way to get gear, and the difficulty is done in stages, like a slider, so you can pick what's best for you. Now, you are able to do 3 fights for each boss, so if you want to do those each day, you'll get your hands on a lot of gear, because that's what the boss fights is for. It drops gear, right? Stuff's good. I'd recommend doing it. Topping it off, each stage that you clear for a boss unlocks an entry in the index you can claim for rubies. Sadly, it's a one-time deal per stage, but you know what, take what you can get. Rubies are rubies. Thinking about index entries, Elunes also grant rubies as you evolve and improve them, so get cracking there. There's also the lore section here, where you can view some lore and get rubies for it. There's a lot of rubies at the start, as you'd expect from a gacha game. And then we have the Lightier Temple Daily, which is how you farm the big skill seeds to evolve units. Don't worry, it's a very simple map to clear, and it also has a difficulty selector, so choose whatever you're able to clear. The Dimensional Rift is another daily you'll have to be worried about. You get waves of enemies thrown at you, and as you clear them, you get to pick a reward from 3 choices. Sometimes it's a full heal, sometimes it's a buff, sometimes it's rubies. Pick quickly though, you only get a few moments to actually decide on what you want. Alright, so let's talk weeklies and dailies real fast. I do want to go over what I had said previously. I had said that if you finish all the daily missions, you'd get 20 rubies. Turns out, you only need to clear 5 of the 7 daily missions to get the reward. The thing is, you do need to make some progress in the story to achieve this. Not too far, mind you. I think just the end of Chapter 2 is enough to unlock everything you need for that. The same goes for weekly missions. You don't need to complete all of them, just most. Beyond just daily and weekly missions, there's a lot of other ways to obtain rubies, and a lot of other useful things actually. There's a neat system in the Adventure Hard Mode maps, the Affinity system. In the bottom left corner of your screen, there will be a list of units, when you're on the Hard Mode map screen anyways. And each of those units want a specific item in bulk to improve their affinity with you. You can get these items from just farming the Hard Mode maps of that area, which I do using the auto battle system. It also helps me grind out experience while I'm doing it, so. To climb higher up the affinity tree, it'll take more and more affinity points as you go, but there are a lot of nice rewards as you climb up towards the final prize, which is a copy of the unit itself. Reminder that each item you can give will actually reward a different amount of affinity points based on how much that unit likes the item. I would recommend that you only use the item that gives the most points. That way you can climb multiple affinity ladders for more overall items. So if you don't want to rely on the gacha and want a way to farm a specific unit, this is one way to do it. You may have also noticed that some characters have a quest rewards section. By completing the map's objectives, which is usually, defeat a certain enemy enough times or clear the map a number of times, whatever, you'll get affinity points and extra rewards for it, including rubies. So keep an eye on them. They do reset daily and you're able to farm them. So make sure you do get your hard mode map farming in whenever possible. Free stuff is free stuff, right? Also, don't forget to put units into training. Leveling units with decent rarity you aren't going to use can be thrown through the fusion system. Fusion allows you to merge 2 units and get one of the same or higher tier back. Very handy if you ask me. Recycling units to try and get a better one's pretty awesome. The only requirement to this is the Elune has to have reached max level for its rarity, so 3 stars has to be 30, 4 stars has to be 40, so on and so forth. The higher the tier and rarity of the units you use for fusion means the better return you're going to get from it, so keep that in mind. Something else to keep an eye on when farming is the Darkture Pirates. They randomly appear after a fight and last for an hour. They grant amazing rewards when you beat them, and it's not a terribly difficult fight even if you don't have the best lineup. The XP and gold rewards are also quite large compared to what the normal fights would give you, but the real treasure's in the loot they give. These guys can drop a skill paper, which you can turn into skill books later on, so farming, pretty useful. So now that we've gone over most of the basic stuff, let's talk about evolving. Evolving units, as you can imagine, will improve them by quite a bit. Here's my current DPS for example. By evolving from a 5-star to a 6-star, it would actually get about a 50% boost to every stat. So now if I switch to a unit that I can transcend, you'll see that there isn't such a luxurious boost every level. But it's still important to remember that fully maxing a unit is the end goal. And yes, you do actually require a 6-star copy of the unit in question to transcend each level. Enjoy the grind. Something I found was neat was that each rarity actually has its own dedicated costume, which is pretty cool. You can change them on demand. So my overall experience with building a team in Elune is getting them to 50 or so is a pretty important milestone, so 5 stars maxed. I would recommend against raising a unit too much though if you plan on tossing them relatively soon. In the case of the healer I use, I actually plan on exchanging her rather soon, so I haven't invested any healer seeds into her yet. Seeds are another thing I should expand on. The large roll seeds are actually rather scarce once the game stops giving them to you in bulk. The only ways to obtain them, that I've found anyways, are through the Lightshire Temple daily and from select story missions where you fight a boss, and those only reward you once. There are enough seeds at the start to evolve each roll a few times, but just be wary of over-investing. Okay, I think I got most of the things that I've learned out of me. Oh, right, team formations. When you slot a unit into the front line or back line, they'll either match the formation requirements, or they won't. Formations can be changed in the bottom left area of your party selection screen, and you can upgrade them for further boosts. Once the units you put into place match the formation's requirements, you can get bonus effects for your team. Little effort for huge payoffs. There's also the Zodiac system. Check back here every 5 account levels, as a new sign will unlock every 5, up to a maximum account level of 60. These give extra stats as well, so be prepared to spend some extra gold to improve them all. And finally, explorations. These can net you gold, Elune's light, and rubies on occasion. Just fill the unit slots and away you go. Okay, now that I've had my fun with word soup, let's summarize the important parts of this. Rerolls are nice, but it's more important to have a good Elune for each roll instead of just a bunch of legendaries. It's important to remember that transcending is very important to increase the overall stat pool of your Elunes, so legendaries might not be the best option to start with due to the rarity. Gear complements your Elunes and can give you a lot of bonus stats, so make sure you farm gear when you can and to check the supply shop for high level gear. Remember to take your 3 daily buffs, remember to pick your 3 daily handouts, and remember to claim your 4 playtime rewards. Do your daily boss fights, Lightshire Temple, Dimensional Rift and all that. The challenge tab is actually pretty important to go to every day. Rubies are easy to farm and access when you start, and once that starts to dry out, you'll be relying on farming the daily hard mode map quests and the exploration rewards, along obviously with the daily and the weekly missions. Improving things like the formation level, zodiac buffs, and gear are all important to your overall stat pool. The Affinity system can give lots of helpful items, and it culminates in a unit if you max it out, and finally, evolving brings major stat boosts. But the maths to do so are time-gated or ruby-gated, I guess, so just be careful. Hopefully this info helps you figure out how to handle your first few days of the game. I've got more farming to do, so I'm going to get back to that. See you in the next video.